Welcome. You guys are joining us for Readers and Writers with your hosts, James Hill and Athena Paris of RockHill Publishing. And today we're getting an inside look into what RockHill Publishing is.
Thank you, Amy. Uh, I'm James Hill, obviously. I'm the publisher of RockHill Publishing. And my co-host down here is, well, for me, she's down here, but my co-host is Athena Paris, and she's the editor for RockHill Publishing. And I would like to start off by giving you a little bit of an idea of what we're about. I'm going to read to you part of what our mission statement is. So, RockHill Publishing was founded on the principle that a new writer is no less talented than one that has been published for years. The journey to getting published should not be the path of heartbreak and soul-crushing rejection, as we all know. However, there are some lessons that only time can teach. But you do not learn talent. You only perfect it over time. And that's sort of like what we believe, that you can't really teach somebody talent. You know, it's like playing guitar. You know, I could strum a guitar. I can't play a guitar. You ever heard me play, you would know I have no talent. So you might be able to teach me where the notes are and things, but I don't have the talent to play. And the same thing goes with writing. You hear a lot of people say anybody could write a story or everybody has a story, which is true. Everybody has a story, but not everybody can tell a story. Not everybody can write a story. And we can teach you, and you go to school and you learn these things about English and grammar, and they teach you the mechanics of writing, but people cannot put a good story in your head, nor could they pull it out of your head. That has to come from the writer themselves. And that's why we say uh, you don't learn talent, you only perfect it over time. So as you write, you get better. If you don't get better, well, then that's a whole different story. What do you think, Athena?
Well, yes, those are my views exactly. You um, any talent needs to be practiced. You need the experience of something, because you need to put the hours in, to put your brain needs to be taught to think in that way. So writing is exactly the same as playing any instrument or painting. The more you do it, the better you get at it, but you need to have the basic talent to start off. There's very few people who are complete surprises, who are a hit from day one. They do exist, but not everybody is like that. So you will get 1 in 100 who is born talented and knowing exactly how to write a story the proper way. So those are the hits that you get. That's why you get maybe a 25-year-old who writes a novel, sends it in, and it's an automatic hit. Why? Because that person just happens to have the talent and the technique all put together at that time. But most of us are not born that way. We either have one or the other, and then we need to learn to put it together and become that good author.
So as an editor, you see a lot more of the working on people's techniques. As
Yes.
a publisher, I kind of look more at the idea of the story. The story, does the writer tell a good story? That they put something out there. Uh, and for you, as the editor, and I'm speaking for you, but you can correct me if I'm totally off base. But as the editor, I think you look more towards the technique of a story, because I know on occasion you had said, "I like the story, but what do you think? Do you think it's going to take a lot of work?" And I read it and I'll tell you, it looks like it's going to take a lot of work to,
Yeah.
to actually do the story. So I think you look at it more with a critical eye towards the techniques
Yeah.
of the story, as
Yes.
I look at it more with the eyes of, is it a good story? Is it intriguing? Does it capture the imagination?
Yeah. Yeah, it is like that, because sometimes you see the story and then you ask the writer, do you think you can fix this? Because I mean, it's not the editor's job to fix the story itself. My job is to fix some of the grammar, make sure that it flows, that it makes sense, and all of that. And then that is what you ask the writer. Listen, this needs to be changed. These things don't make sense. Your development didn't follow the way it was supposed to. Can you fix it? Some writers can. They understand your instructions and they work at it, and so you get a better manuscript the next time. And that is why there has to be the communication between the writer and the editor. So you basically work together, a back and forth a couple of times, until you get the manuscript that when you read it, yes, the story makes sense, it flows properly. So now you have the two, the story and the editing, that work together. So now um, it's ready for formatting and being published.
Yeah, I find that a lot of time, and this is with every writer, not only new writers, which we kind of like specialize in bringing new writers, because at one time, me and you were both new writers, and we know the struggles we went through, and only after years of practice and years of actually going over our work and things like that, did we actually get to the point where we're at now. So, but I noticed that even as even as I would say we're seasoned writers at this point, because to become an expert in anything, they say it takes like 50,000 hours, and that breaks down to about 5 years. Uh, of work. So to become a SME, which is a subject matter expert, if you're in the computer world, so become a subject matter expert after working at it for 5 years, 40 hours a week is where they get that number from. And even the most seasoned of writers, they still write a lot of stuff at the beginning of the novels and don't really start their story until 2 or 3 chapters in. And so a lot of times you have to sometimes cut those couple of chapters out, or you have to rearrange them, which I know is what you're talking about, the flow of the novel. So for readers and writers who are listening to us, when you talk about flow, you're talking about the way the story develops, the way the chapters are lined out. And a lot of times we'll get a story that starts off somewhere and it builds up, and we find the actual start of the story is like chapter 3 or 4. We get all the background information and all this other sort of stuff that the writer wants to put in because they're thinking, and we all go through this. We go through the process of telling the story, but we don't actually start at the beginning of the story. We work our way into the story, and then it's the editor and the publisher who then goes through it, and we find the point at which the story starts. I like to start my story at the pivotal moment. A lot of my
Yeah,
stories start at the pivotal moment of a character's life because
yeah.
that's actually the start of their story.
I usually try to tell the writers, try and aim for half an hour before the start, before something happens. Think about the conversations or the events that could lead to the actual happening of the start of the story. So I say half an hour before the story starts, but I know you do that. You start at the event. Yes. So
Yeah, I like to start at the event. I like to drop the reader right into the story, right into the character, and immerse them in the story. And then we can fill in the background to the character and stuff later or as the story develops. And you can start getting the background of the information. And that sometimes, well, with some of my stories, the Killer series, you get some flashback. And that's because it's pretty much in the presence. So you get flashback into what actually led up to that pivotal moment. And then the story can go on from there. So, uh, like I said, since we work with new writers, part of what Rock Hill Publishing like to do is we like to give guidance to our writers. So when you come to Rock Hill Publishing, it's not just we read it and we either say yes, no, or we send you back a form letter or something like that. We always give guidance, even if we're not going to take on the subject.
Yeah, right. Yes, we do that. We like to help them, steer them in the correct direction. Because if somebody would like to be something, they need some help, sometimes how to achieve that goal that they looking for. And it's good for them to hear whether there's a possibility that they're going to make it or maybe not. Because like, as you said before, we all have a story to tell, but the telling of the story is not equal with everybody. And some people are good with words and could put a story down, and others are not so good because we are just not so inclined to write stories of that caliber that could be read by a mass audience. It's true that we all had to write essays at school, but the teacher could tell, hence why marks exist. She can see who the A students are who've got that inclination for putting, be able to tell a tale properly, whereas some, as hard as they struggle, they just can't tell. Their thoughts seem to be all over the place, and they can't string their sentences in the same way and make something sound interesting. Because that's what a writer actually is take everyday events most of the time and make it interesting.
Yeah, that's quite true. And one of the things I find with new writers is sometimes they think they have one type of story and they actually have something completely different. They'll tell you they're writing a romance, and then when you read it, it's like, no, this isn't a romance. Uh, because the definition of a romance is it has to have a happy ending and all that kind of stuff, as you know, because you're a romance writer. I'm a sci-fi writer and a fiction writer, and I know there's certain elements of that need to go into a story. So when we get a story from people, they think, "Oh, I wrote a sci-fi," or "Oh, I wrote a romance." And then when you read it, it's like you're missing the elements of those stories. First off, second off, you wrote a fantasy. You didn't write a sci-fi. You wrote a fantasy, and then we can guide them in the proper way of setting up fantasies and things like that. So it there's a lot more to publishing than a lot of people know, and that's why we're doing the podcast now. But we want to help readers and writers get to understand what publishing is all about.
Yeah, that's right. Help the people who are lost, because there are millions of people right now who want to know what to do, how to do it. And there are conflicting bits and pieces of information all over the place. Some people say this and some people say that. And where does a writer go to find out what the real thing is, except from other people who are either writers or publishers and who can steer them in the right direction?
Yep. I'm going to do something really quick right here, which is I'm going to flip my background around so that when I slide to the side, that side, you can actually see our logo and the RockHill Publishing LLC, the name of the company, the name of the publishing house. Uh, so there you go. RockHill Publishing is who we are. We've been in business for, I would say, a couple of years, like about 7, 8 years. And like I said, we work to help new writers. That's why we're in business. Amy?
Wow. No, I love it. Man, there's so many things I love. I work with RockHill Publishing. I am their publicist and I help them. But I love that you guys focus on new writers because I know that they need the guidance. And, you tell them the hard truth like it is about being a writer. And so I'm so excited to do this podcast with you guys. I love it. But, you're going to have to join us next week on Writers and Readers because James and Athina are going to be talking publishing and editing, and you're not going to want to miss that. So make sure that you join us next week right here on Writers and Readers.